Uh, Bill, you picking up the idea of entrepreneurialism. I think of entrepreneurialism, thy name would be Drayton. That is really what you have been so much about recently. But all of these institutions and the process of partnership building begin with individual people who commit themselves to do this kind of work. Can you tell us a little bit about the role the individual plays? How can we maybe better equip individuals to do the kind of work that we're calling upon them to do? And tell us a little bit about Ashoka too, please.
All right, well, Mike started us off with a point that the world is changing. I was at a lecture, I was dragged to a lecture recently where this guy got up and he showed 80 slides in an hour, breaking every AV rule. And what he was doing was that every one of those slides was showing a mathematical curve, which was the rate at which change is accelerating in different parts of society. It didn't matter what sector, what country, the curve was always logarithmic. And I think that's the central fact, that all this change that this conference is about and all its dimensions are wrestling with. And it's not just that the curve is logarithmic, but the change is coming at each person, each organization, each society now, not from one vector gradually, but for millions of organizations and combinations of organizations. So the rate and complexity and richness of change is unprecedented, and in 10 or 15 years it'll be many, many, many times what it is today. That has huge implications for everyone in this room, for every organization that each of us is a part of, and the combination of organizations. And so let me give you I think the best way of introducing the idea that everyone can is give you a few examples. These are Ashoka Fellows. Is talking with an African colleague. He's dealing with the fact that there are landmines all over Africa, not unique to Africa. Well, it's dangerous for people, or for that matter, dogs, to deal with trying to find where the landmines are. So he came up with a very simple solution. There is a very smart, large rat with a very big, extremely acute nose in Africa. And it turns out that the rat, if it steps on the landmine, does not set it off, but the nose, it can smell whether it's there. So this begins to change the process of getting rid of landmines. It also turns out that those rats can tell the difference between a spit sample that has TB in it that doesn't, so it becomes a frontline medical device as well. Now, anyone in this room, if you've given yourself permission to say, how can I solve the problem of people and dogs being killed, you could probably have come up with that. A Canadian fellow saw that more and more kids, the only reaction they had to other kids was aggression, which invites aggression back, and every time you go through that cycle, it gets worse, and the future of that school is rather grim. So she came up with a very simple solution. She asked the schools to give her 1 hour a month, and she brings in an infant, less than 1 year old, plus mom. The infant is the professor. The kids in the class, not the teacher, have the responsibility of figuring out what the professor is saying and then feeling. This is limbic learning, and kids get into it. They master empathy, which is the foundation of being able to be a part of society. Bullying rates come down and stay down. She's in 4 years now operating in several different countries. Again, very simple solution, and the difference is that she gave herself permission to see the problem and kept at it until she found a solution that she could sell to schools all across the world. The world, as we are faced with ever more rapid change, needs everyone to be a change maker. Everyone has to be a team member in a universal team of teams. And when we see something that's stuck, we say, oh, this is great. I know what to do here. I know how to work with others. And we go about making a contribution that brings us maximum satisfaction in life, expressing love and respect in action. So everyone can do that. We need everyone to do that. And this comes to Sam's point. This also requires everyone here who is going to be a leader or a manager. The old way of managing is a dinosaur that will not work. Agriculture produced a small surplus. A few people have run everything ever since. With this pattern of change, every organization, whether it's a university, a company, a city, a religious group, has got to be contributing change on many dimensions simultaneously, and that requires everyone in that community to be a player, an initiator. And that also means that those institutions have to be teams of teams. This is very different from a few people deciding and managing everyone else, which is a euphemism for controlling. Why did Silicon Valley take off and Detroit and Milwaukee die? And same thing, Bangalore versus Calcutta. Well, the places that are succeeding are communities of change makers who enjoy creating together, and they're creating institutions that help them do that. And those, wherever you have a company or a community that does that, they're getting ahead. Now, Loyola and Xavier created one of the first Everyone a Changemaker organizations in history. I am sure everyone here knows someone who was a Jesuit, and they always managed to tell you within the first 4 to 8 paragraphs that they were a Jesuit. Because they're very proud of that. Because the Jesuits, so all their members say, go out and have the biggest impact in terms of works and faith that you possibly can. And we expect a lot, and you can do a lot, and this community does it, and we back you. Now, this is a 450-year-old organization that is as vital today as it ever was. Compare that with the Fortune 500 of 20 years ago, most of whom have disappeared. There's a difference in how you manage. And the challenge now is that we've got to do this society-wide. If the United States or Mexico or Poland does not make the transition to having a very large part of the population be change makers right now and not wait 10, 20 years, we don't have 10, 20 years, we will be Detroit and not San Jose. Now that has a huge implication. Everyone here, this is a very talented group. You can figure out how to do a better job with rats or TB, or helping every child be able to play in society by giving them the fundamental tool of being able to work with others, or whatever the problem is. You can do that. And you can also help us create more Silicon Valleys, more Jesuits in whatever organization you're a part of. And that's really our challenge.